You ought to get married again, Ennis. Me and the girls worry about you being alone so much.
Well, once burned.
You still go fishing with Jack Twist?
Not often.
I used to wonder how come you never brought any trouts home. You always said you caught plenty, and you know how me and the girls like fish. So one night I got your creel case opened up before you went on one of your little trips. Price tag's still on it after 5 years. And I tied a note to the end of the line. It said, "Hello, Ennis, bring some fish home. Love, Alma." And then you come back looking all perky and said you caught a bunch of brownies and you ate them up. Do you remember? I looked in that case first chance I got, and there was my note still tied there. That line hadn't touched water in its life.
It mean nothing, Elmer.
Don't try and fool me no more, Ennis. I know what it means. Jack Twist. Jack Nasty.
Welcome back to the show, everyone.
Welcome back.
This feels like the longest break.
It has felt like felt like a really long break.
You're like, set up the equipment. I was like, come on.
We even got a new bag, so we're not using the same cardboard Amazon box that our mixer came in.
We got a new gig
in
bag.
2019, so that's nice.
I love it. Listeners, my name's Pete.
And I'm Scott, and these are the movies that made us gay. Welcome back to the show. It's going to be a really fun premiere. We have a great movie to talk about and a good friend of ours. I guess it's Valentine's Day adjacent episode.
Sure.
Valentine's Day was just on Tuesday. This is Friday. So I guess here's our sad cowboy Valentine. Welcome to the show. I wish that I could quit our guest. Third time on, Drew Stanley. Welcome to the show.
Drew, welcome back.
I don't wish I could quit you. I love being on the show.
Mm-hmm. And yes,
it's been too long.
It's been a while, but yeah, we are starting out the season talking about Brokeback Mountain, directed by Ang Lee, sort of in a mini Oscar season on the show.
Right.
I'm programming 3 Oscar movies, so I guess this is just the big gay Oscar loss that is it's important to talk about.
We also ran.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The feel bad movie of the summer. It's not summer, but I mean, boy, oh boy. I have very strong feelings about this movie, as I'm sure the three of us do.
Well, it's interesting because we don't normally on our show, we usually don't program the super on the nose movies. We definitely do. Like, we do get to kind of the big gay movies that everybody immediately thinks about, just because, I mean, it's Brokeback Mountain. It's the gay cowboy movie. This movie was a huge deal when it came out in 2005. And definitely, I mean, at least one of my big experiences with mainstream queer cinema. And I'm going to make a generalization that I would say a majority of people, this was kind of the big movie for them, especially when it comes to queer cinema.
Yeah, definitely. I think for a lot of gay boys, it definitely was their first kind of on-screen gay kiss they probably ever saw.
Sure.
I was reading that Ang Lee, when he premiered it in Taiwan, he said that in the first theater screening, when the public saw it, that everyone gasped when they heard or they saw the two cowboys kissing. So I think it was a worldwide thing for sure.
There was gasping in Orange County when I saw it for the first time in Southern California. I was telling Scott, we were watching this movie, and I was like, oh man, when the audience gagged when Ennis walked into the tent on night number 2.
Yeah.
When the audience gagged when, Alma Sr. saw them out the window. Like, it was like, it was not quite Def Comedy Jam, but, in it wasn't Los Angeles. I did see this in Orange County, but in Orange County, in Southern California, granted, Orange County is a red enclave in typically blue California, and SoCal especially. But yeah, I feel like there was a definite visceral reaction from the crowd watching it, and just people being like, "Whoa, okay, all right, they're going there, you know, with all of it. So yeah, I think it was definitely for a lot of people a big eye opener as far as representation, right? Of these characters.
Yeah.
I was talking to my friend last night about he remembers when they were marketing it, and he grew up in Montana, as Scott and I did, and he said that when he went to there was an AMC he went to go see it at, and he saw the posters for it, and we'll talk about the Titanic-esque poster that we all know and love, but they also did a lot of marketing for it that was like basically like straight baiting, where they would show a photo of like Jack and his wife instead
That's
of
how the ads
men.
were in the trades in like Variety and the Hollywood Reporter and stuff. When they would do For Your Consideration ads, they would always put in the shots of Jake and Anne and Michelle and Heath.
Yep.
I can't.
Yep.
I can't.
Mm-hmm.
There's a poster I saw today of Jake Gyllenhaal and his wife, or Ennis and Jack and his wife in a maternity ward, like holding a baby.
Sure.
And
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And that's like a lobby card for this movie. I feel like, a big kind of litmus test for me is, my mom and my aunt. Like,
Sure.
Are Melinda and Margie going to these movies?
It's nominated for a lot of Oscars. They have to see it,
Oscars,
which is always interesting when you get sort of an offbeat Oscar contender that they're sitting through.
Yeah. So, for me, Melinda and Margie are always my litmus test of like, is this movie too crazy?
How is this going to play in the rest of America?
How is this going to play in Pomona? And I will never forget discussing it at my grandma's house at like the dining room table. My grandma not participating, she was probably making something, but just sitting there going, they saw this movie like it ain't no thing, and here we are talking about it.
Yeah, it was a huge deal.
They had questions,
and
I was trying to like express them, but it was very much like,
did they have questions about the tent scenes specifically?
well,
what did they have questions about?
Their questions were, okay, so what's Ennis's deal? Is he gay?
Sure.
Is he?
Yeah.
Which is kind
gay?
of
Is he
interesting.
bisexual?
Which is kind of interesting to the material because it's definitely there in the short.
It brings up a whole other conversation about like queerness and all that stuff.
Like, would you describe Ennis more on the bisexual?
Right. But it also brings up the conversation of just like, this is all they had, and which is a big theme of this movie is, every couple of months. First it was 4 years, and then we find out, another audible gag in the theater was when Annie, my girl Anne Hathaway, she's like doing her thing on her little ad machine, and he's like, "Oh, where's my jacket? I can't find my parka or whatever." And she's like,
Anne's really good in that scene.
she's really good in that
So
scene.
good.
And she's giving him the whole song and dance about, well, why can't he come up here? You go over there all the time. And he's like, oh, his truck can't make it, whatever, like excuses. And then she goes, on her breath, she goes, you're going up there 3 or 4 times a year. And the audience went,
Yep.
because you don't know. The movie doesn't really illustrate the passage of time, and it gives you these little bits of information of how much time has passed. And when she said, at this point now, you're going up there 3 or 4 times a year, you're like, oh, girl, he's going up there like every 3 months.
For sure, yeah.
Now for these fishing and fucking trips. And you're just like, woo. And I remember specifically the audience like, ah! Like they lost it.
I'm not sure when you actually figure out the entire time span, but it ultimately they ended up having this whole shindig happening for about 20 years in the story. Yeah.
Alma Jr. is 19 at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And, you know, so yeah, and that's another part of that question of like, well, you know, how is Ennis gay? And it's like, well, Ennis doesn't identify as this or that. These are just feelings he has and how he's, you know, expressing them. You know, we've got the time period, we've got social norms, all of that stuff. So it's like, that's, like I said, that's a whole other conversation that I'm not going to sit there and tell my mom, like, well, Ennis Delmar is a bisexual man.
Yeah.
He's a 6.5 on the Kinsey scale. You know?
He's actually a demisexual is actually what it is. Yeah.
There you go. But, you know, it's just all these factors are like, you know, befalling him to just kind of like, this is all I got. This is all we have is these like quarterly, you know, trysts up here at Brokeback. But that's what's so heartbreaking about the movie at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Well,
me.
before we get too into the story of Brokeback, we talked a little bit about it. So you saw this movie in Orange County. Let's get in our time machine and go to fall of 2005.
Yes.
Which is a very different time than what we're living in now. But also, I was thinking, there was a lot of kind of major studio movies that had sort of LGBT angles in them. And I was making a list today. So we got the obvious Brokeback, Capote, which was in Best Picture with Brokeback Mountain.
Right.
This is the year of Rent. The producers, our very last episode, The Family Stone. Did you know that we did 2005 movies back to back?
Right.
Family Stone out the same month as this movie. I think it was like the week after this came out.
Yeah, this came out in December, I think, of 2005, right?
Well, there you go.
Yeah. So I mean, it's kind of the LGBT, like the LGBTness was sort of seeping into mainstream pop culture. Yeah. It was very hit or miss. I don't know if anybody really cares about the producers or Rent anymore, but I mean, it was they were big studio movies with gay characters in them.
Yeah.
And I remember reading about Brokeback Mountain when I was in high school, that it was all over online. Heath Ledger and Jake Gyllenhaal are signing on to a gay Western directed by Ang Lee, and they're shooting it in Canada. And I'll always remember when I was working at the movie store at the time, I think it was shortly after production period, and somebody came in that worked on the movie. And he was like, oh yeah, I'm working on the new Ang Lee movie. That just wrapped filming in Alberta. And I was like, oh, wow. Like, did you meet Heath Ledger or Michelle Williams? And he goes, yeah. And I actually went to a hockey game with them, and they're both really nice people. And Michelle Williams, Drew, is also from Kalispell.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Did you know that?
No,
yeah,
that's
she's
crazy.
from Montana. I think that her family still lives in Montana.
Yeah.
And her parents, like, shuffled her back and forth to Los Angeles when she was a kid.
That's wild.
From Montana when she was like getting started when she was like 13 years old.
Good for her parents.
Yeah, right. Must be nice. But yeah, so I remember reading about this movie when I was in high school, and then it was a huge deal when this came out. So I saw this movie at the Gallatin Valley Cinema in Bozeman with my friend Jessamine, and then I went to it again the next month with my friend Rose. So I took my girlfriends to this movie twice. Sure. And I remember, just because it's set in Wyoming, everybody in Montana did have an opinion on this movie, including family members of, I'm not going to see that gay cowboy movie. And you can definitely relate to that. Like, we are both country kids from like a rural community.
I grew up in the country, yes, in the same area where Scott grew up as well. And I had actually I think I had just come out, or I was about to come out when this movie was in theaters. So I didn't actually see it in theaters. I also would not have been 18, so I couldn't have seen it because it was R-rated anyway, right? Or no, was it PG-13? Or it was R, yeah. And but I did rent it from the movie store where you used to work.
So we did
after
figure
it came
out
out
that
on video, and
this did not cross my time at the movie store.
Yes, our paths did not
since
cross.
quit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Our paths did cross, but not with Brokeback Mountain. Yeah, and I got the DVD and I scurried it away in my room and watched it on my little TV in my room, and loved it. And I think I've seen it now 3 or 4 times since then, and watching it last night was the first time I'd watched it in a really long time. And I think the thing that hit me the hardest, aside from it's just a brutal movie anyway, but Heath Ledger, like, R.I.P. to that man. Yeah. Like, he's such a good actor. Yeah.
Yeah, he's really good in this movie. I feel like we went to high school with this character too, especially how we talk.
I'm related to this character.
Drew and I definitely
this character
know
is
this mumble.
Has my genetics.
He just talks like he has rocks in his mouth.
Yes,
we definitely knew this guy.
Yes,
growing up
for sure. Yeah, and they did a really good job, sort of just typecasting that character for sure, in both in Ennis and in Jack, for sure, in this movie. And I noticed as well in the landscapes, I kept forgetting that it was filmed in Canada because it looks like Wyoming,
exactly,
or where we grew up.
It looks exactly around where we grew up. It looks like. I mean, it looks like the Crazy Mountains.
It does, yeah.
In certain shots.
Yeah, it does. Or like even, Glacier Park or something in certain parts of it. But yeah, I think I think that the biggest thing was that that Heath Ledger being gone for so long. I was just like, oh man, he was like, what a loss. He was such a good actor. I also will say I let out the biggest gay gasp twice when Anne Hathaway came on screen, and then also when Anna Faris came on screen. I completely forgot that Anna Faris was in this movie.
I think that we had the gay gasp when you saw David Harbour.
Oh, yeah.
Probably the first thing I ever saw David Harbour in without even knowing his name.
Well, that was the first thing that anybody saw David Harbour in. I don't
Bear
think
icon.
He was a good 15 years away from
And that's
Stranger
a character,
Things.
too, that I think that I was that young, like 19, I think that whole storyline did kind of go over my head. Of that, oh yeah, he's
Really?
fucking Anna Faris's husband.
Fishing, yeah.
Oh yeah, like I don't think that I fully grasped that whole subplot of the movie.
That he was cruising Anna Faris's husband.
Yeah.
And then
he was giving it right back. He was just like, hey man, I got that cabin.
Yeah, yeah.
It was like, work. But, you know, when you look like Jake Gyllenhaal, it's probably not that hard to find.
It's true, yeah.
Trade, you know, anybody that's willing.
Something else that struck me watching this last week I reread the short story this is based on by Annie Proulx, and it's a really good adaptation, and it's over 2 hours long, but they really like didn't have to add too much to it.
Everything in that movie is in the short.
Yeah,
pretty much
sure.
literal off the page. I remember we read the short for a film class that was specifically about adaptations of just sort of this is a really
Well, it's that thing of like, you know, something that's 1,000+ pages, Lord of the Rings, is unfilmable as is in book form. But and that just kind of shows you how much content is in 100.
Oh, not even that.
Yeah.
I think it's
80
it's like
pages.
70 pages long.
Yeah.
It was like an hour read, basically.
Yeah, and that makes a 2 hour plus movie.
Yeah.
which is so interesting about when you adapt material like that. I went to Montana for the first time with Scott in 2013, but when I watched this movie, I thought that the landscapes reminded me of that little bit when you're driving on the 5 and you're going to the Glendale Galleria. Just don't look at the disgusting LA River to the right. Only look to the left and see
All right.
the Hollywood Hills. It doesn't really look like
Not really, though.
Yeah.
I was just trying to contribute.
I was going to say, I'm trying to imagine where in LA that looks like, and I can't think of it.
You know that bit of Griffith Park, but the
Yeah.
backside.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of Brooklyn, actually, when I watched it. It was just uncanny how much of Brooklyn it looks like, for sure.
Ennis and Alma's apartment.
Yeah,
Above
right,
the launch
right,
pad.
yeah.
Which would go for about $3,500 right now.
Yeah, seriously.
I was reading about the production history of this movie, that this was being opted in the early 2000s, and there was 2 major Hollywood directors were attached to this movie before Ang Lee got involved. The 2 are Gus Van Sant, obviously. This seems like very on brand for Gus Van Sant.
Yeah.
And at the time, Matt Damon and Joaquin Phoenix were the ones being considered as these 2 roles. And I'm sure Ben's name was thrown in there somewhere.
Yeah, for sure. And Matt, I think it was Matt Damon, when Ang Lee approached him to be in the movie, he said something about how he's like, well, I've already done a gay role and I've already done a cowboy role. I can't do a gay cowboy role. And it's just like, okay, go away.
And the other director that I thought was interesting was Joel Schumacher. That was doing meetings on it. And I think that when he was involved, it was either Ryan Phillippe or Josh Hartnett, but probably Colin Farrell. Because he kind of discovered Colin Farrell.
Right.
Did you know that?
Thin blue line. Red line. Blue.
Tigerland. Yeah.
Tigerland.
So, I mean, that would have been an interesting movie. And people don't really give Joel Schumacher a lot of credit that he's directed a lot of different types of movies. So why couldn't Brokeback Mountain fit in there somewhere?
Sure.
And then Ang Lee circled back to this movie, I think, around like 2003.
Right.
Yeah.
I was in 2005. I don't remember how old I was. Early 20s. I had out for a few years. I had already had relationships that I had introduced my family to. So I was just like, friends, let's go see this movie. So I took some friends to it, and I'm sitting there the whole time just like affected and just like, oh my God, this is so sad. And I think that they were just very like,
Well, you get a load of this.
They just had that kind of giggly like, oh my God, like kind of reaction to it. And I was like, you guys, that was so sad. And they're just like, remember when they were in the tent? And I was just like, stop.
Of course. Yeah. That's like, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, and I don't know if it was because we were young and, you know, they were, you know, mostly straight friends, and they just, you know, they weren't confused by it, but they were just like not, you know, like I was saying, how my mom was just like, so what? So what's the deal? You know, people want to like put labels on things and all of that. And, you know, we as gay people, along with getting to choose our family, we get to just like kind of, we go through that like period of like maybe the whole like, no, of course I'm not gay. Then it's like, maybe I'm bi. Then it's like, yes, I'm gay. Then like after a while, you're just like, whatever, who fucking cares? Like,
I thought
bottom, whatever, verse, otter,
yeah.
silver wolf, blah, blah, blah. It's like, I don't give a shit. When you get to a certain age, you're just like, you are into who you're into, and based on circumstances, like we said, it's like this movie starts out, like we kind of touched on, this movie goes through a roughly 20-year span of these two characters. And it starts off in the mid 60s and it goes to like the early 80s, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Like crazy time for, you know, like being queer, you know, crazy time in American history, a lot of like turmoil, all that stuff. They're in like a very conservative part of the country, all that. And so, you know, you just kind of, you see the circumstances they're in, and I feel like wherever you were, just a certain generation, we all kind of have that like, God, that could have been me, or that is me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is how I'm going to have to live my life, or this is how I have been living my life. Or thank God I don't have to live my life that way. But I feel like as queer people, we watch this movie and you just relate on some level somewhere to what they're going through.
I mean,
and I think straight people are just like, well, what are they? How do they identify? Like, that doesn't matter, right? They don't even have the vocabulary.
Sure.
Yeah.
Even Jack, who clearly like is probably like an 11 on the Kinsey scale, just like dick. Like Jack is like straight up gay.
He's a
like
homosexual. Yes. Yeah.
Yes. But it's just like, because of his circumstances, he's married. He married Lorraine. Can we just talk about her name as Lorraine?
Yeah.
That's such a name of like our grandparents. I'd love it.
For sure. Yeah. And I think that it's what you were saying, Pete, about not having the language to put on like whatever you're feeling. I think like that's what it was like before we had terms like gay and lesbian and bi. Trans is a different thing, but like gay, lesbian, bi those are relatively modern terms in the scheme of human history. And so prior to that, people just did what Ennis and Jack did, is they acted on their feelings and often were with both men and women. Of course, women they were with because women were seen as property more than anything else for a long time. So that was a big part of that too. But I think that's kind of what's happening here, is they didn't have the words to put on it, but they knew what their feelings were. Which is also kind of the beauty of the story too. Mm-hmm. And the deep sadness as well.
Oh my God. Yeah. And it's like, I feel, you watch it and you think like Ennis probably does love Alma,
Yeah.
Michelle Williams' character. It's like there is love there. He loves his daughters.
Yeah. The scene where they're at the fireworks show. Yeah. Like that scene was meant to show you that he cares about his family and he cares about his kids and he wants to be a good father, but he can't shake his love for Jack.
But there's just something about his intense connection with Jack that doesn't really compare it to his love for his wife.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, so that's the other thing about this movie, is that it kind of has everything. Like, it kind of has everything for like, and it's, again, especially going back to the time, it's very important that we like talk about the time period that this was in 2005. Like today, we're in like a post Glee kind of like world where it's just like, I'm 11, I'm queer, get used to it. And you're like, all right, you know what I mean? But like in 2005, it's like, yes, these movies were out and we had Will and Grace for a good 6 years at this point. But you know, we're still very much like very othered, you know, we still are today, but even then it's like even more so. And so this movie has everything, because if you're like a young kid who's just like thinking, it's got like all the like the camping stuff, right? And you're just like, ooh, this is like, this is shit that you're just like, I've never seen anything like this before. For like an older person, it has the drama and the real romance that these characters have, you know?
Jake and Heath.
Yeah, Jake and Heath.
Big draws at the time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then like, if you're a little bit older than that, or if you've been in a long-term relationship, the more their relationship grows, you see that like, yes, they're going up to these trips to like, go to Bone Zone like every 3 months, but also they sit there and they have these conversations about their lives, and it's just like they really are in this long-term relationship that's lasted all these years.
Yeah,
so it's like, you know, queer people can relate to this too, because of like with like hookup culture and like all that stuff. It's like sometimes you have these people in your life for so long, and you're just like, hey, what's that? And it's just, it becomes this long-term, long-distance relationship. And we're all just like, yeah, cool. I know, I've been there.
Yeah, for sure. It totally felt very real. And what I was saying earlier is that I was like, I don't remember how old I was. I would have been like 15, I guess, when this movie came out, or when I rented it anyway. So I had either just come out or was out right after I rented this movie, but I watched it like in secret. I couldn't like watch it with anybody. I did have
watching this with the family.
No, oh my God, not at that time. No, now my parents would. My parents would like try it.
Were your parents familiar with this movie?
Yes,
at the time.
Yeah,
because I would think that they would be.
Yeah. It was like, I don't think that there was any sort. They didn't like. I don't remember them ever talking about it in a negative way, but just, you know, it was definitely within everyone's mind for sure. And
I'd imagine that it was probably like, oh, you mean the gay cowboy movie?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. We're not going to watch that. Yeah, exactly. And I did have a really good group of friends like that all watched it as well. Like after, you know, later on, and so that was when I watched it the second time, was with some friends, and this was a couple of years afterwards. And that even like you could tell this movie really changed a lot of people's views on gay people in general. And it sort of spoke a language for a lot of people that, you know, they needed to have that sort of interpreted for them, as far as like the whole cowboy thing, for sure, that they can exist anywhere, and they do. And, you know, I mean, Annie Prue, when she got the idea for Brokeback Mountain, I think she said that she had been like in a bar somewhere out in the West, and, saw a man watching men play pool, and he like was only watching the men play pool, and that was when it struck in her, and she was like, oh, maybe there could be like gay cowboys that would fall in love and have a tryst for 20 years.
Yeah.
I mean, especially when you think about just sort of where we're from. I mean, I think that both of our families have been in Montana for a while.
Forever.
And when you just kind of look at the LGBT experience, like, well, of course there were gay people back then. And what would that would that experience have been like?
Bitch, you think it's hard to find a gay person now? You open up Grindr in like the middle of like nowhere but fuck Montana, and it's like, oh, the closest person is 150 miles away, and it's like, want to meet up?
Yeah, and that person's always like, it's very sad, because they're like, you can tell that they are kind of an Ennis or a Jack figure a lot of the times. They like, they're not. Like, if Ennis or Jack had Grindr, well, maybe not Jack, but Ennis, if he had Grindr, there would be no face. It would just be a torso, and like that is like the
picture at all,
right? Exactly. Yeah, they're not sending you anything at all. But yeah, if you open up Grindr in the middle of nowhere in Montana, like a lot of times Grindr will be like, oh, here's the nearest person to you, and it's like Minneapolis or Seattle. It's like 13 hours away.
No, when we go back to Montana, I find looking at scruff and stuff to be fascinating.
It is very fascinating.
When I'm around Burgess County.
Yeah, it is
and
very fascinating.
Which I'm always kind of surprised of what random areas. It is kind of interesting to see where are those communities when I go back home now.
And so we have the luxury of the internet to say somebody is 98 miles away. Do you want to hop in the car right now? But
you just had to go off of like a look.
You know what I'm saying?
Back then.
Yeah. Like he said about the pool players and all that stuff. And, and I remember specifically the scene where Jack tries to buy the drink for the rodeo clown.
I'd like to buy Jimbo here a beer. Best damn rodeo clown I've ever worked with.
Thanks, cowboy. If I was let every rodeo hand I pulled the bull off would buy me liquor, I'd been an alcoholic long ago. Pulling bulls off for you buckaroos is just my job. So save your money for your next entry fee, cowboy.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's that thing. That's that age-old question of like your aunt. Like, how do you know? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's that thing that you had to do with that when you are in a town with no gay bars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Especially again going back to the time period that this movie's in. If this is let's say it's the early 70s. In the Northwest somewhere, there's not going to be a gay bar in these towns. Well, he's in Texas now, even worse,
Yeah.
So it's that thing of how do you know? And he's just trying to be very like, oh, you're a rodeo clown, so I don't know, maybe.
You're kind of constantly having to put yourself at risk by you're gambling every time you go to one of these bars, and you're like, is this guy going to think that I'm hitting on him, and is he going to take that well, or is he going to get triggered and like beat the shit out of me? Yeah. And then you go to like find an actual sex worker, like he does in that one scene. He goes to the border and finds a sex worker because that's where you have your outlet a lot of the times, I think, in those days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Or even now.
I mean, I have memories of like being in my early 20s and just like most of my friends were from college were straight, and so we would go out and I would go out with them to these bars, and we're in Los Angeles in the early to mid 2000s. In like the most hipstery of hipster bars, and I'm still just like, oh fuck, I don't know, man. Like, am I gonna get my face smashed in? And it's like, where else could be more inclusive than an actual gay bar?
Yeah, for sure.
But the places that we're at, and I'm still feeling like, holy shit.
I mean,
so I can imagine just getting that, like when I do go to like real straight bars, I'm just like, ah. But,
I don't know if I'll ever like shed that defense mechanism that I think we all gain, but especially from Montana, where I live in New York now, and like it is generally very fine to be gay basically anywhere you want to be in most of the areas of the 5 boroughs. But I still have this sort of like radar going on, unless I'm in an actual gay bar, then it doesn't really matter.
Did I ever tell you about the story of when I was at the Montana Tavern in Lewistown, and I was there with all of my girlfriends? I think that our friend Rose was there. I think that Jamie was there. Just a guy in a bar alone with all of these girls, and even the bartender was like a girl. So we're all just sitting at the bar having a good time. We see a truck like go by the bar, and then it stops, and they come in, and they come up to me, and they're just like, "Hey, looks like you're having a good time. Do you want to buy some Viagra?" In my hand, in my sweaty palm.
Oh.
And I'm just like,
loose Viagra out of my hand.
What?
And you could sort of tell.
That
and you
one's
could,
a Skittle.
And you could sort of tell, like, as he was talking to me, that it was clicking of that, oh.
Right.
I don't think that
I'm barking up the wrong tree here.
I'm barking up the wrong tree here.
Yeah.
And he was actually very nice when I was like, I think I'm good. Not right now.
Yeah.
I'm good. And he's just like, all right, have a good day. And then I was also, and then I was just thinking of like, this could have gone many different directions.
Yeah. Bullet dodged. Yeah, for sure.
And hopefully, and I'm glad that it went in the right direction.
Yeah.
And also a unforgivable erection dodged as well, because you didn't buy that Viagra.
But also, it's just like, what if I was straight? Of just like, all right, girls, like, we got 4 hours.
We got
4 hours.
What the hell?
from this loose Viagra tablet.
It's also
in
like
this
Viagra
gentleman's
is
hand.
not illegal. Like you can just go get it. Like why would you sell a loose Viagra in a
You
bar?
still need a prescription, and men
That's true.
Are very.
That is
there's a
true.
whole-
Yeah.
There's that hymns and Roman and all that. There's a whole like cottage industry.
Well,
of,
actual
like,
Viagra is expensive.
Well, that's what I'm saying. There's
Yeah.
this whole cottage industry of like, are you too embarrassed to go to the doctor to ask for dick pills?
Right. And those same companies do stuff like the hair loss creams and anti-aging serums and stuff because they're too embarrassed to be like, is it gay to care about my appearance?
Yes.
Okay, so the opening scenes of this movie that Ennis and Jack meet being sheep herders. I mean, they're just kind of doing cowboy work for farmers that just need to keep their sheep in one place. Has any of your family done anything like this? Because my dad has.
Yes. Yeah.
Your dad absolutely has.
I believe that, well, I think that also the crazy mountains around where we grew up, I think that they do have sheep farms like this, like up in the mountains. It's called, it's the Sweetgrass Hills.
Yeah, I could see
You
that.
see a lot of kind of sheep up there. And that's where these two meet.
Yeah, working for one Mr. Randy Quaid.
Probably the last credible thing
Right,
Randy Quaid was
right.
ever in. I think he's really good in this movie.
Yeah, he
Oscar
is.
nominee Randy Quaid. Don't you forget that.
Not for this movie.
But
for something
not for this movie, but yeah, he has an Oscar nomination.
He plays a very good asshole for sure.
Yeah. I think he's really good in this movie.
He is very good.
But you know what this movie does, and I mean, attribute it to the script, the actors. I'm down to the costuming. You know who these two characters
Yes.
are before they walk into Randy Quaid's trailer.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Ennis has his brown paper bag with like food in it and like some clothes, and he's like not talking to anybody. Jack comes in this shitty old truck, but like better clothes, right? Like Jack's outfits are always a little bit more put together, a little bit more like this is what a cowboy dress is like, right? I mean, this is what I'm getting as somebody who has no kind of like reference for this lifestyle.
Oh, this scene definitely struck me as someone who does have this reference. Like it is a spitting image of someone you would see like at a gas station in central Montana for sure.
Yeah.
At least
which
back
is
then.
crazy. Which is crazy because I feel like both of their looks are very like, it doesn't look outdated or like or like, oh, this is clearly a 60s.
It's that
like,
classic
movie.
Wrangler style
Like,
that is timeless.
Both of those two in that first scene could walk into anywhere today in those exact outfits, and it's like,
Yeah,
these are
definitely.
this is what you wear when you do those jobs.
I think that I even noticed that Jack's character wears Wranglers, and I think Ennis wears Levi's.
Oh,
if you're going to be that specific,
all right.
that might not be the case in all of the movie, but I definitely noticed it in certain scenes of the movie.
yeah.
Interesting. I didn't notice that at all. I wonder if
But
there's
like
something
Jack
there.
is definitely more like attempting to be like more outwardly confident and like leaning on his truck and like,
Also, just kind of classic cowboy.
Jack.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Ennis is just like kind of like day laborer, just like migrant worker, kind of like
I'm not here to
no
make friends.
frills.
Yeah.
Even down to their hats. Kind of Jack has the more traditional black cowboy hat, and then Ennis just kind of has it's kind of like a sheep herding hat.
Yeah. And apparently this job that they take, it's illegal. Like they're not supposed to be doing it because the sheep are being kept on, I think they said it was kept on like federal land. So
that's why one of them needs to spend the night with the sheep.
Exactly. Yeah.
They're not supposed to be there.
Right. So this guy's hiring all these day laborers who are down on their luck and they'll do really any work because it's illegal. They can't say anything. So it's sort of they can do whatever they want with these day laborers, basically, or treat them how they want.
And it's interesting because like even though kind of Jack has this outward appearance of being a little bit more confident and maybe having a little bit more money, what we find out later on is that he does not have any money. He's just as down on his luck as Ennis. Really, like Ennis has no family. His parents are gone. His caretaker, his older siblings are just like, we're married now and you're of age, so go get the fuck out of here, go make your own living. And what we find out about Jack is that his parents don't really have a lot. You know, they have a ranch, and that's about it. You know, he wanted to go and ride horses and rodeo and all that. But, you know, it's like you said, if you're taking this job, this is pretty much you need anything.
Yeah, you're desperate. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And so they do have that kind of in common, but Jack being a little bit more boisterous and being a little bit more, like we were saying earlier, or like I was saying earlier, a little bit more like outwardly, like straight up gay. He kind of, you know, he sees Ennis, maybe takes a liking to him at the very beginning, and is just like, all right, I'm going to use this summer, and I'm going to make any excuse to fucking.
He makes the first moves.
Yeah,
he does. He introduces himself first, and sort of is the he's the more outgoing one for sure.
Yeah,
he's the one who's also more emotional.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But you see these little things of him like complaining a little bit more about having to sleep with a sheep, and it's like he's trying to be able to stay at camp with Ennis, but it backfires the first time because Ennis is like, "Okay, you don't want to go sleep with a sheep? I'll go do it."
Yeah.
You know, and he's like, "Fuck, well, that backfired." You know?
I'm not here to make friends. Yeah.
yeah. So they're every night, you know, they're having their little sad can of beans like dinner, and like drinking this whiskey, and I'm going, how much the fuck whiskey did Jack bring on this trip?
I mean,
Scott was like,
the
Chilean,
they're
they're ordering
Chilean
it. Yeah.
sheep hoarders or herders are just giving them bottles.
They're ordering it with the rest of their food.
Other supplies, They're
throwing in whiskey there.
And it takes a while for us to get to the actual love interest part of it. I mean, you can see it building up, but they really sort of, and not in a bad way, they really kind of drag it out a little bit to build up that tension for sure.
Man, you could really feel on that night where
how cold it is.
Ennis gets in the tent with them because when I would go camping with when I was a kid, and you would wake up at 3 a.m. and it would be 30 degrees in the summer or something.
Oh my God.
And it was just so cold.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And it was
I've
snowing,
definitely been there.
I think, at that point too in this movie. So it's definitely below freezing while they're laying in this tent, and and that's what the snow is what brings them together finally.
You know, sometimes you just need that body heat.
Literally, you need
shot,
it. Yeah.
That shot of Jake grabbing Heath's hand and putting it
on his
over
crotch.
him.
Yeah.
So good. And you can, I mean, just that whole sex scene of just
the famous, that's what everyone thinks of when they think of Brokeback Mountain, is this scene. It
really is, but I feel like it took a while and I remember the first time I saw, you know, now it's kind of like a meme or like a joke of oh, you know, the real hero of this movie, Jack, he had an ass full of beans and no lube.
Bareback with no lube. Yeah.
My friend he grew up in Miami, was telling me that he saw this movie at an outdoor, everyone was on pool floaties, and it was an outdoor theater. He said in this scene,
so Miami.
Yeah, I know. And when the sex scene happens, he said that it was, you know, a bunch of queer people just in a pool, and they were all like, oh, that's gotta hurt.
Been there.
Yeah,
I mean, again, I remember when Heath Ledger spits in his hand, the whole theater was like,
yeah.
No.
But you know what? I think that people misremember the scene being more graphic. Because it really isn't.
It's not, yeah. It's definitely, and I think intentionally so, it's very much not passionate. It is they're having or at least Ennis is having angry coming to terms with myself sex, and Jack is finally getting what he's been pining for this entire time, and it's a painful, probably imagine not great experience for anybody involved. But then we get more scenes like this that are much more they're very, very romantic and very sweet after this for sure. Including
great shot.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say great shot of when they go back up on the ridge and he sees the dead sheep. He sees the dead sheep.
Yeah.
And then there's that shot of them looking over the landscape. and just how that shot's like framed. This movie has like beautiful camera work. This is a Mexican cinematographer. This is shot by Rodrigo Puerto, and he is a Mexican DP, and he works with Scorsese a lot. And just how that shot is framed is so beautiful.
Yeah, the shots...
Because they're just sort of both looking out onto this beautiful but very lonely landscape.
Really, really good. Like tons of wide, massive establishing shots that are done really, really well in this movie. Yeah, like at the very beginning, the shot of the semi, I think, is driving down the highway and it's just surrounded by nothing for miles. This is really, really good. Yeah.
Seeing this movie in the theater, you really get that sense of just like, and I think they were trying to show just like that whole big sky kind of quote unquote feeling.
They just programmed this at the New Beverly, and we missed it.
Oh, did they?
I had to work that day, so I couldn't go see it.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that you know, setting everything up, finally, you know, having that one scene in the tent that first night. And then, you know, there's a very intentional scene of, you know, Ennis getting his horse ready, and Jack's walking towards him, and he like pulls out his like shotgun, and he's like checking it, puts it away, and he's like, ah. But you know, like I said, it's the scene that it's the next night, and they're like packing up, and Jack goes in the tent, and Ennis is sitting there, and you're like, okay, what's gonna happen? And he gets up and walks in the tent, and everybody in the theater was like, ah!
Yeah.
Because you're not sure what's going to happen. I mean, we know what's going to happen. It's a movie. They're on the poster, but...
Yeah. And then we almost get like a slow montage of these scenes of them being together, you know, in the wilderness. Yeah. And then eventually they get caught, but they don't know that yet by the
Randy Quaid.
Randy Quaid, yeah. He's in his binoculars, and he's up in the trees, and he's not happy about it. And we get the famous quote when they come back to the office to get more work. He's just like, "We weren't paying you boys to let the dogs wash the sheep while you were up there stemming the rose."
That needs to be a quote that I need to work into my everyday conversation.
Like, I know.
What the hell did he say?
Stemming the rose. That's also in the story too. Like she wrote that in. Yeah.
Yeah, and just in that Randy Quaid delivery, it's so good.
It's very good.
Oh my god! And you know me, City Mouse. I'm just like. But what is the point of them I'm thinking this is City Slickers. Like it's a cattle drive. They're taking them from point A to point B.
Oh.
And I'm like, why is Randy Quaid?
No, they're just keeping him one space.
He could just go on like a day trip and be back to his trailer by lunch. Like, where are they? I'm not getting it. I'm like, this is making zero sense to me. And yeah, Scott's explaining it. He's like, "Oh no, they're just putting them on the side of the mountain for bloody bloop." And I'm just like, "All right, whatever. It doesn't matter."
We get the great screwball antics of the other sheep that get mixed in.
Love it.
I
love seeing Jake manhandle that sheep.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
Oh my
Jake
god.
Also someone who is a city slicker.
He is.
He is in City Slickers, an industry kid from Los Angeles, and you see Jake handling that sheep.
Yeah. Yeah. There's things about this movie that I'm watching, and I'm just like, I get that this is authentic.
I had to fill Pete in that when you get those shots of the sheep on the mountain, that I have a memory of my dad when I was a kid and being out and calling them maggots. Of like, those are like mountain maggots, because when you look at them, they look like maggots
from far away. Yeah,
from far away, and I'll always remember that.
They're also about as smart.
Yep.
They're also about as smart as a maggot too.
Oh,
that's a very like.
Dumb.
That is a very Pete Youngbauer.
That's a very
expression.
Pete Youngbauer expression.
I mean,
yep.
Your dad has a lot of colorful.
He has a lot of like old cowboy terms like that.
Yeah.
When they mention roughneck, that's something that my dad would say.
Well, a roughneck is an oil rigger.
Yeah, somebody that works on an oil rig,
right?
Or like
I learned that
in like the oil fields.
Sure, I learned it from Armageddon, where you're supposed to learn that.
When you're an LA City Slicker, you learn from Armageddon. Yeah.
And I'll also remember being up in the mountains with my dad, and we would be looking for mountain goats in the crazy mountains, and he said, "You got to put on your mountain goat eyes."
Sure.
because like when you're just looking at the mountain, you can't really see them, but then you have to just look closer,
Right.
and you can see them
Because they blend.
You got to put on your mountain goat eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, my dad / my grandpa also had lots of those sayings too, like older than the hills and twice as dusty. As my dad always says, about himself.
Yeah, love it. Ennis said something that I was like, "Oh my god, that sounds like something your dad would say." And I forgot. Oh, 40 Winks. He said he was gonna when they were drunk when they were right about to do it. He said he was gonna
That's
go get
right.
40 Winks, and I was like, 40 Winks. That's such a Pete Youngbauer.
That's right. Yeah.
saying.
So they
I was gonna say when they get back, when this thing ends, and it doesn't really end well. Like they kind of fucked it up. They lost some sheep. They brought back some sheep that weren't theirs.
Yeah.
It's kind of a debacle. It kind of gets cut short a little bit. And again, I think they really kind of show you that Jack he's more aware of what's going on, and he's really trying to orchestrate things. And like, he was more pissed off when it ended, not because he's losing money, but because he's losing time with this guy that he clearly found, something. Ennis is probably pissed that he's losing money on some lost weeks. But when they kind of part ways,
I mean, Ennis like stalks him.
Well, that whole scene, before
And you get the bloody
when
shirt. You get the bloody pearl,
Yeah.
the bloody pearl and snap shirt.
those goddamn shirts.
I love all of those shirts.
They're great. Yeah, I have a couple shirts like that. Yeah.
Yep.
and I'm sitting here going, they're riding horses. They're going back and forth chasing these sheep, and they are tucked in shirts. The whole time. This is a time period that is long gone.
Yeah.
If I'm doing this job, first of all, where am I in my life that I'm doing this job? But second of all, let's just say I'm doing this job. Can I just wear some shorts and like a t-shirt, like a cut no sleeves, like baseball cap? I don't know. It's a whole different culture, but I could not imagine a long sleeve buttoned down with the sleeves rolled down, buttoned, and tucked in the whole, and cowboy boots.
I was gonna say I have cowboy boots that I wear for fashion, but I couldn't even imagine wearing them to do hard labor.
They're not
There's
comfortable.
There's scenes where there's a campfire and Jake puts his whole entire ass boots in the fire.
Yeah, he's
And I was
drunk.
like,
Yeah.
Is that real? Is he drunk? Is that something that real cowboys are like? He's fucking up those boots.
Yeah.
I'd like to find out what real cowboy people have to say about that whole situation. But he's clearly drunk.
Yeah.
But not only does Ennis beat the shit out of Jack, well, they both bloody each other up, and the shirts are both all bloodied. But then when they get back and they are leaving town because it's over, and Heath Ledger beats the living shit out of that wall. I'm just like, oh my god!
Yells at the guy walking next to him.
Yeah,
He's like about to puke because he like is so
just that dry heaving. Oh,
yeah. And I think this is the same
way
scene.
He hits that wall.
Yeah, I think he actually
Strong emotions.
I was reading that he broke his hand or hurt his hand in that scene. Yeah.
I was like, that does not look like a fake, like rubber, like breakaway wall. That looks real.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is the same scene we get where Jake is driving away and he's like sobbing in the truck. It's so sad. Yeah.
And there's that shot of Ennis in the rear
mirror.
Yeah.
So good.
And then I think we kind of fast forward after that to where
this is where the timeline starts speeding
up. Should we discuss the domestic portions of this movie?
I'd like to talk about Annie and Michelle.
So we should probably start with Michelle.
They're doing some heavy lifting here.
Yeah, for sure.
In very hard roles of the movie that everyone, of course, loves to talk about, Jake and Heath. But these two actresses are doing some pretty good work in this movie.
Definitely, yeah.
Got Michelle an Oscar nomination, her first Oscar nomination.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Her first of 4 or 5.
Okay, let me see.
I think this one's 5.
We got Brokeback. We got Blue Valentine. I think it's 4.
Oh, okay.
No,
Fabelman's is 4.
I
think Fabelman's is 5.
I think Fabelman's is 5.
I think Fabelman's is 5. We'll leave it at that. We'll put a pin in that.
My Montana Sis. Michelle Williams.
You're good, Montana Judy.
Pete always gives me shit that like whenever Michelle Williams is mentioned in any conversation, I always chime in.
She's from Montana.
She's from Montana.
Little known fact, except for now. She's from Montana, yeah. I mean, we don't get a lot of people from Montana, so we have to like treasure those moments.
It's like Michelle Williams and like Gary Cooper.
Oh.
And David Lynch.
Yeah,
David Lynch is from Montana.
Missoula. Yep, that's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
When they first cut to her, Walton's ass, little house on the prairie, little tiny house on the edge of town, I'm just like, bitch.
2 kids.
First of all, they already have 2 babies. She is just like, what did they do specifically that I was like, why are they doing that? Oh, washboard in the sink.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Which especially at this time in the 60s, like you would think that you would have maybe moved on to something else.
But I guess maybe that's just how poor they are that a washing machine.
Yeah, I think they're just
this house is just too expensive.
He's like not making enough money. She's working at a grocery store, and then they have 2 kids, and they have another one. I think she hasn't gotten pregnant with the 3rd one yet, but she will eventually. Yeah.
One of my kind of big takeaways when revisiting this movie now that I've lived a life that thank God that I never put any woman through this experience.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
I feel bad for both of them.
I thought about that a lot. Like
I feel bad for both of them. Yeah.
When I first watched this, like you said, Scott, I was so young that I didn't really consider it. But now, like, I have so much empathy for both of them. I like, she obviously treats Ennis incorrectly, I think, when she finds out that he is having an affair, and I think she does it in a shitty way because it's from a place of homophobia for sure. But like, he also is being an asshole, like, and ultimately kind of a coward. Even though in this time period, you can't blame someone for not coming out and not wanting to do that, but like
he didn't need to come out, but he could leave her.
Yeah, exactly, and not have another kid. Like that scene where they like are having sex, or they're about to, and she's like, "I don't want to have another kid," and he just like he like rolls over and they just turn the lights off. Like that's so brutal. Yeah. Like this, there's so many complex, I guess, emotions in this because. He like you feel bad for him, but like he's just doing all this the wrong way for sure. Right. Yeah.
When that first time that he gets the postcard from Jack, so he gets the postcard and he's like, "Oh fuck yes, this is happening," and like I love how we kind of get set up early on that Ennis doesn't talk a lot. When he gives his little speech about his family life, and it's a sad story, and Jack's got a smile on his face, and he's like, "That's the most you talked like all summer." So when Ennis is waiting for Jack, he's like sitting by the window, right? Yeah, with like a beer in his hand, and like he's sitting by the window looking and all that stuff.
Yeah,
and like, okay, I forgot that she catches them out the window, and I was like, bitch, she does not catch them this early. And Scott's like, oh yeah,
she does
this early, day 1.
Yep.
Bitch is onto them, and I'm just like, she kept that under her hat this whole time.
In the short story, they are like making out next to the front door, and she opens the door a crack and sees them, and it's just like on the other side of the door from them.
Oh, bitch.
Just being like, oh my god, like yeah.
What the fuck? She has 0 words for what is going on. She's just like, what the fuck am I seeing?
Yeah, yeah. Because again, there's no language for this. Like like there is, but it's all bad. Like there's only bad things can come from this, is what she's thinking for sure. Yeah. Which is also like, you can't blame her because
she's not wrong.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting that they both have these kind of hardships that they go through, and like Ennis is a lot of it is just kind of centered around their income level and their poverty level and all that, and Jack does a lot better for himself and his family financially,
but he's not any happier once he
Mm-hmm.
does marry into that.
Right.
Yeah.
And we do see his wife, played by Anne Hathaway, who her introduction to this movie, fierce.
I think Anne Hathaway is doing some great work in this movie.
She is, yeah. She gets introduced as a rodeo lady, right?
Yes.
And then they
Barrel
meet up at the
riding
bar.
on
That's
the
right.
horse.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes.
I love her
And
sequined bodysuit that she's wearing, or it's I guess it's just like Wrangler jeans and shirt.
And but like the red shirt with the fringe, and then the red felt cowboy hat.
Yeah.
And it is fire engine red.
Yeah.
And this is like, and that's the thing. It's like you see these two, and we get kind of introduced as like this is this very American West kind of cowboy culture, and he talks about riding horses and all that, and you see, and it's a very masculine culture, and now you see this woman. And she has got her top has like crazy fringe, and she's wearing a matching cowboy hat, and it is a red felt cowboy hat. And it's just like, yeah, this culture it's not just it is a very masculine culture, but it like there's shit for like these women that ride these horses and
doing barrel racing.
Doing the barrel racing.
Yep.
And and she's just like rides up to him on this horse like, give him a hat.
Yeah.
And
you see those boobies?
You see those
of Anne Hathaway.
Right.
I mean, good for her. I mean, Anne at this time would have been coming off of like the Princess Diaries 2. So, all right, you better work, girl. You're making a movie with Ang Lee.
Yeah,
and you get to show a little bit of your boobs.
Love it. We haven't even gotten Devil Wears Prada yet.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
I think that I read a story that they did a 10-year retrospect on this movie, and Ang Lee talked about meeting Anne with casting, and they did it on the studio lot, and she was making the Princess Diaries 2. Oh, wow. So she met with Ang in full princess drag. Of, like, I'm going to sit down and talk about why Genovia. I want this role.
She came straight from Genovia.
And she is dressed like the princess from Genovia.
Okay.
That's amazing. That's probably what inspired him to put her into the outfit she was wearing in this movie, is that because it's just like so over the top.
Yes. And her platinum blonde.
Oh, I love her wigs in this movie.
Yeah.
Fucking cotton candy ass platinum blonde wigs.
But Michelle got the Oscar nomination because clearly she has the big Jack Nasty scene. Sure. That was the scene that everybody was talking about at the time.
Yeah.
But you know what? I think Annie has some really great moments of when she's in the office and she's at her adding machine and she's like, why do you always have to like go all the way up to like Wyoming to visit him while he could just come down here. I think there's just something about that delivery with Anne that is just so good.
Yeah.
How much does she know? How much is she willing to compartmentalize for this life that she's built, this family that she's built with this man?
Yeah.
And she has had to for her father hates.
Oh, he's such an asshole. Oh my god.
The father is this huge son of a bitch.
Yeah.
But I see this actor in things.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
he's in a lot of stuff.
That guy.
Fuck that guy. He was mean to Jakey. But you know what? But what I like about the relationship, though, is that you get the big Thanksgiving scene.
Yeah.
Which, what's up with like Ang Lee and Americana Thanksgiving movies? Anyways, this and the ice storm, and there's even like an ice storm reference in this movie. Did you catch that?
I did not.
When he's asking about his jacket, and she says that you last had it for that big ice storm.
Oh.
Anyways, but when he says, "Sit down, you old son of a bitch," and I love that Anne has that smile on her face.
She smiles. Yeah.
I said, like, all right, yep, like this is our house.
I think,
and she gives her son like that look.
I think what you said, Pete. I think that she definitely is sort of onto him a little bit. Like I get that drift in this movie that she like is just sort of keeping her head down, but she knows that there's something going on, especially between her and Jack. Between Jack and Ennis, but she just doesn't know what it is. But yeah, I love that scene when he tells him to sit down, you old son of a bitch, and she just kind of has this smirk, but she's looking at the table still. It's like, oh, it's so good. Yeah.
When this is later on, but when she does have her phone call with Ennis, I mean that was the scene where I was like, bitch, Anne Hathaway, you better fucking work.
And it's all done in that tight close up too.
Extreme close up of her like cigarette mouth. And she's telling Ennis this story, And it's like she's told this story how many times at this point to everybody in her life.
Yep.
This is what happened to my husband, but she knows what happened to him. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? It's
yeah.
like she knows what happened, but this is a story that she's telling everyone. This is a story that she's telling Ennis, this man that she's like, oh, I know you. Like, I've heard about you.
And I'm sure that she's like, you can read between the lines.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
In the story.
Yeah.
I think we also are. I think that they almost intentionally. The story goes into this, the short story goes into this a little bit more, but we're almost led to believe that you're not really sure if the like murder actually happened or if he actually did get hit in the face with the tire.
Sure. Because I remember when first watching this movie that when you get those cutaways, I didn't know at the time, is this in Ennis's head?
Ennis's head, sure.
Well, and
Of,
there's
like,
the
of what he
flashback
thinks happened.
that Ennis
Yeah.
has, where his dad, Ennis's dad, was an abusive piece of shit,
Yep.
and there was a gay couple that lived in Wyoming where Ennis grew up, and one of them gets murdered, and his dad like took Ennis and his brother down to look at the body to like show like this is what happens to you if you're gay, and so I think that in the short story it like is very much like he imagined that Jack had the same fate happen to him. I think I land on the side that he did get murdered. Like I think that is what happened, but it intentionally is sort of meant, like you said, Scott, like it's meant to be like this might all just be in Jack's head because he has or Ennis's head because he has no way of knowing.
Yeah, like his relationship with David Harbour got so obvious that everyone in town knew what was going on.
And that's why Ennis was always so combative about Jack's idea, which was a good idea that he had 15 years ago.
Yeah, to move to the
Jack
ranch.
gave him this. He gave him this idea so long ago. Like, hey, we could do this. You know, we don't have to keep coming up here
like
once or twice a
I
year.
think Jack is capable of making those steps, but Ennis no
Ennis
way.
was not.
He wasn't at all.
gonna be able
Yeah,
to do that.
he was
And
too
he had that
ashamed.
fear in the back of his head his entire life because, like you said, of what his dad had shown him.
Yeah.
You know, and so
God,
that was
that
always
scene
there.
is
It's just
awful.
like, this could never work. You know, it could never work because we will always get found out.
Yeah.
You know?
What got me on this viewing is the later scenes with Jake and what gets me is the later half of Jake and Heath scenes together, that these are two actors in their early to mid 20s. And they look like men in their 40s.
Yeah, for sure. Especially
And
Heath
that
Ledger.
you
yeah.
get
Yeah,
this
they did a really
whole
good job.
entire life led between this two, and you can tell Jack is like, I can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I cannot keep driving 400 miles to have our fucking fishing trips
Yeah.
for these high altitude fucks. I love that line. These
yeah.
high altitude fucks that like I can't do anymore.
Yeah.
Like
We need
I've
to fucking fix this.
given us the
We're gonna
option
fix
that
this
we
now.
can
Yeah.
make this work,
Yeah.
and you're just not doing it.
Well, I think what finally breaks him is he goes to meet up with him, and he goes to Ennis's house, and Ennis is
After
with his
the
daughters.
divorce.
Yeah, and makes him go home, and it's like he just drove up to you from Texas to Wyoming.
Yeah.
And you're making him turn back around again. And so then you find out, or Ennis finds out via the phone call that he also had another boyfriend, I think, right? Like that he was.
Well, is it David Harbour?
Well, he said he tells Ennis on when they get into the very last fight in the "I wish I could quit you." He tells him that he's seeing a woman.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
and
right.
I took
That's
it
right.
that
He tells
and
him
I-
that he's seeing a woman, but again, it's that.
is he
thing.
talking about House Bunny?
Well, that's the question. Is he talking about? First of all, is he talking about Anna Faris? Second of all, is he really having an affair with Anna Faris, or is
That's
he
what
actually
that's
fucking?
what confused me when
Is
I
he
was 19.
actually fucking David Harbour
Mm-hmm.
and just saying I'm having an affair with this woman because he can't tell Ennis that I'm having an affair with another man, because that would be even worse.
Yeah, yeah.
Because that would really be cheating on Ennis.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
yes, we both have our wives, whatever. I have somebody else on the side, but it's a woman. And Ennis laughs. He's like, oh, all right. Okay. Like you got a girl. All right, whatever. You're like, and again, when we do have that great phone conversation between Anne Hathaway and Heath Ledger, she says that when Jack dies, he was 39. only 39 years old.
That's right. Yeah.
And maybe Ennis is a couple of years. Who knows? We don't know what their age difference is. When Kate Mara comes over and she's like, I'm engaged. And he's like, you're 19. And she's like, I'm engaged. I'm like, is he 70?
Well, also
he is walking around like
but also,
he needs a goddamn walker. Like
very different
like,
time. We're just men, especially.
This is true. People did
age very differently. And that's what I was saying is that these two young actors, they do kind of transform into these characters, and that's what I think would be really hard, because it's one thing to be playing gay, and especially at that time of that, would it have been a career killer? I don't know. I was watching an interview with Jake Gyllenhaal on Stern, and Stern asked him that, like, what kind of things were going through your mind? And he answered him like, well, when it's Ang Lee, you don't really give it a lot of thought. Like, you want to do it because it's incredible material. But I think that the real hard part is really selling that you're 40 years old when you're 23 years old.
Right.
And that kind of stuff is hard.
They gave Jake a little fatty suit. He's got a little belly.
That's right. He does have belly.
In the Thanksgiving scene, he's got a little belly.
They give Heath some like some old age makeup a little bit.
So they give the crow's feet is a really good. It's a stippling effect. It's a stipple effect. I learned that on Face Off or one of those like special effects makeup shows. You like crinkle your face to make the wrinkles, and then they like put the makeup in there, so it's like goes with your actual creases.
That makes sense.
So it's not an appliance. It's not like a heavy piece of latex that they're putting over your face.
Yeah.
They're literally putting makeup in the natural creases in your face, and they're building on that. And so that's why Heath.
So it doesn't quite look like they're doing like the Drag Race. I'm gonna make myself look old.
Or like the Lady Gaga like pointy cheeks. Like it's a more subtle makeup effect, and that's why Heath looks like 50.
Right,
you know,
yeah.
And he's like 28.
They did do a good job of making them look like they'd aged 20 years for sure from the beginning of the movie.
Yeah. But that's the thing that, you know, those scenes where, you know, where Jack is just like, he's just at the end of his fucking rope. And what's unfortunate is that at the time, I wish I could quit you kind of became this like punchline kind of like.
Yep. Gay cowboy movie. Yeah. Jack Nasty. I wish I could quit you.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you watch the scene, Ennis is talking about like, oh, you know, when we were young and we would come up to the mountains, I would just quit a job.
Yeah.
I would just quit.
He has adult responsibilities now. He can't do it.
I can't quit this job to come and see you. And the whole thing is they used to see each other every couple of months, you know, let's say every 3 months. And now it's twice a year. And Jack is like, fuck this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to see you for 6 months, dude. Like, fuck that shit. And he's like, I can't just quit my job. You can't just quit your job now. And he's like, well, I just wish I could quit this whole fucking thing. Right.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of a lag in the dialogue between where Heath says, I would just quit. And he says, well, I wish I could just fucking quit you.
You have no idea how bad it gets. And I'm not you. I can't make it on a couple of high-altitude fucks once or twice a year. You are too much for me, Ennis. You son of a horse and a bitch. I wish I knew how to quit you.
And I think that it's effective and it works, but it did become a weird kind of like, oh, I wasn't gonna quit you, kind of like a little punchline-y.
It did, yeah.
But when I watched it this time, it is really effective because it is just like, you know what, I wish I could just fucking, I don't want to do this anymore, man. Like,
I'm sick of your bullshit, and why do I keep coming back to it?
But you know what? Mm-hmm. It's that thing that it's like, you know, and the other thing too is, speaking of like aging and all that stuff, what were we watching? Something Wild.
Yeah,
we were watching Something Wild the other day with Melanie Griffith and Jeff Daniels, And this movie is from 1985, 86?
I think it's 86 is the year I was born.
1986.
Yeah.
Ray Liotta.
Oh, my God.
Okay, let me tell you this. Ray Liotta is in Something Wild in 1986. And he looks like 1986 Ray Liotta. This body is snatched. The blue eyes.
Super handsome.
The black
definitely.
hair.
Yeah.
You know, the dark eyelashes. All that shit. And I'm like, you know what? This is why moms love fucking Ray Liotta.
That's why also moms love John Travolta.
You know,
Yes.
and
God.
moms will go see a John Travolta and a Ray Liotta R.I.P. movie currently and be like, oh, that Nick Cage. And you're just like, Nicolas Cage. You know?
Yeah.
But it's that thing when you fall in love with someone, for the rest of your life, you're in love with that person that you fell in love. And it does not matter how old we get, how much hair we lose, how fat we get, and all that shit. They are still that person that we fell in love with when we were however old we were. And, you know, Ray Liotta, God bless him, R.I.P., like I said, but towards the end, he looked kind of crazy. You know?
Chantix.
Chantix.
Shantix icon.
Selling
That's
that,
right. Oh my God, I forgot
quit
about
smoking,
that.
Quit smoking drugs. You know?
That's right.
But when you go back, bitch, and you watch Ray Liotta in the early 80s, man, you get it. You get why your mom is like, ooh.
Yeah, even when it's a celebrity
But
crush.
did you see something wild? Yep.
Yeah. And you're like, ooh, Nicolas Cage. Ooh,
That's gonna be that's
fucking-
Keanu Reeves for me. Like he can
Yeah.
age all he wants to, but I'm gonna always find him hot. Like
Yeah, we always
for
see
sure.
that guy that we saw, you know, when we were like 20 years old, and it doesn't matter, you know. And Jack and Ennis are the same way. It's like neither one of them aged that poorly.
Yeah.
They still look like, you know, fucking Heath Ledger. But the thing is, to the two of them, they're just like,
Yeah.
they just keep going back to, and that's Jack's whole point. We just keep fucking coming back to this goddamn mountain. Like, it's cold, it's wet, it's
They
fucking,
should be
like,
going back down to Mexico.
why are we here? Like, we're taking this time out of our lives to be with each other. We can go.
When you find out when Ennis goes to Jack's parents' house after he finds out that he dies, that Jack wanted them to move to this ranch and take it over and fix it up all
It's
nice.
the story
yeah.
he told him 15 years ago.
Yeah.
That Ennis is just this off-page character for his parents that Jack is always talking about this Ennis.
But,
and
you
that
know,
he's going to come to the farm and, like, fix everything up.
yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's that thing that, like, you know, it's 2022. And, you know, when Scott and I have to apply for an apartment or go to a hotel that we've never been to before,
Especially when we're driving to Montana.
you know,
Yeah.
I will always have that in the back of my head. You know, I will always have, like, sure, 2 queen beds is fine.
Yeah.
You know, like, yes, we are applying for this 1-bedroom apartment, but we got a big couch, you know?
Right,
Like,
yeah.
You know, you never know where you are and where you're going to be. And these two characters, for their entire life and their entire life together, they couldn't just say, fuck it, let's go to Miami and get a hotel.
Yeah.
They got a week. They have a week each time
Yeah.
to hang out together. But they never have the luxury of saying, let's just get a hotel room. Let's just get whatever.
They got to go up in the mountains.
Yeah.
Or they're going to go fishing, which is how Ennis gets caught because his wife puts a little love note in the tackle box, and it's still there when she checks again. It's like you weren't
Lion
catching
had
fish
never-
at all.
Lion had never hit water.
Yep. Yeah.
Like, Lion never seen water.
Still had the price tag on it. I love when she says, "You know how much we like fish."
Yeah.
That's what she's truly mad about.
Yeah.
You didn't bring any fucking fish home.
For you to gut and descale, all right, Alma.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
doing you a favor.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's what, when I revisit this movie now, of that, I just really have empathy for both of these two women.
Yeah,
Especially,
I really do too.
I mean, of course, like, enough praise has been said about Michelle. Because she's the one that got the Oscar nomination.
Yeah.
I mean, this role would have been a huge deal for her because She would have been a couple years removed from Dawson's Creek, so she's graduated up to the Ang Lee movies. But there's something about Anne's delivery of when she's talking to Ennis of that, and she says, "Oh, you're the fishing buddy." And you see the look on her face of like, "Oh, this fucking asshole." Like, I know who you are.
Was he buried down there?
He put a stone up. He was cremated like he wanted. Half his ashes was interred here. The rest I sent up with his folks. He used to say he wanted his ashes scattered on Brokeback Mountain, but I wasn't sure where that was. I thought Brokeback Mountain might be around where he grew up. Knowing Jack, it might be some pretend place where bluebirds sing and there's a whiskey spring.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this queen finally calling up on the phone. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, and then after, when Ennis is up at Jack's parents' house, I also get the feeling that, and I think you're supposed to, that Jack's mom knows that he and Ennis were, because she lets them keep the shirt, which is really sweet.
And his dad probably knows too.
Yeah, which he's pissed about. His dad is such an asshole. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yet another male asshole. Imagine that in this movie. Yeah. Yeah, No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, and there's something about their house, and there's something about when they walk into that house.
There's no color.
I know that we have both been in old houses like this in Montana.
Mm-hmm.
Of that, it's this lonely old homestead house out on the range.
For sure.
And when you walk into it, it's just really fucking depressing.
Yeah, I've never been in one that bleak, but definitely have seen.
Same. I haven't been to anything this bleak, but yeah,
like essentially, like it needs to be condemned. It's so like empty.
And you kind of have to give Jack credit that he's such a happy person, and he comes from this.
Yeah,
too.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
His sad little room and his horse, his little toy horse.
Yeah, and his shitty dad and his mom, who's clearly like depressed as hell. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
I've never heard of a cherry cake before, but I would like to try some cherry cake.
Oh yeah, because she offers him a piece of cherry cake.
She offers him coffee and cherry cake. I was like, cherry cake?
Yeah,
I think it's like a coffee cake, but with cherry in it.
With cherries in it? I don't know.
Like a Black Forest cake, kind of. That has cherries in it.
Look up a cherry cake recipe.
Okay, sure.
Dolly, get on your Duncan Hines.
Yeah.
It was a cherry cake recipe. Yeah, that whole thing, and when the dad says, Jack used to say. Ennis Del Mar used to say, and I was like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then he starts giving them a whole thing about, and you two were going to come here, and you were going to fucking,
fix this place up. Yeah.
Oh, my God. Yeah. You guys were going to come here and Tu Wong Fu this place.
Y'all were just going to sissy that walk over all into this ranch and just fix it right up, weren't you? Snatch all of our wigs right off of our heads.
Right off our heads, bitch. Yeah, oh my God. Dead.
You were going to walk that fucking duck into this house, weren't you?
Step all those pussies up. But then too, when he says and then he had another guy that he was going to come up and do it with, and I was like, ooh,
David Harbour.
Right to the heart.
David Harbour.
That's right.
But also, when you think about how are you going to compete with David Harbour?
Bitch.
I mean, I know that we have Stranger Things and David Harbour, daddy icon, but how are you going to compete with that?
When they're sitting on that bench, and David Harbour says, my boss has a cabin.
And he gives him that look.
And he said, I could take anybody up there. And I'm like, bitch, you don't have a pen and paper?
Yeah.
Pen.
And where is that?
And can I get that?
You're in the theater, raising your hand. I'll go. Pick me.
Digits, please.
And then, meanwhile, Anna Faris is just oblivious to the entire thing.
Oh, my God.
She's so
At this
good.
time with Anna Faris, it would have just been it's Anna Faris from Scary Movie.
Yeah, that's probably exactly what I thought, too, when I saw her, yeah.
Also, shout out to Linda Cardellini as Ennis's girlfriend, who does remind me of my dad's second wife. Yep.
Oh, okay. Sure.
She reminds me of my dad's second wife.
She does. I get it.
Just because, like my dad also would have fallen in love with that type of girl at the bar too. But yeah, Linda Cardellini, like super solid. Like she's really solid in her very brief scenes of this movie. She gets she gets the dance to that Steve Earle song.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the Linda Ronstadt.
The Linda Ronstadt song. Yep. Mm-hmm.
That's right. Yeah.
I owned the soundtrack when I was 19 too. I listened to it all the time.
It's really good.
There's a beautiful Emmylou Harris song that does not give. They don't give the Emmylou Harris song that she wrote with Bernie Taupin.
Oh,
that they don't really give it a good scene of the movie, and it's why it was disqualified for the Oscars because it's not really in the movie, but it's on the soundtrack and they wrote it for it.
Sure,
it's playing when Jake is driving off in his truck when he sees Ennis with his girls. And he's crying.
Sure.
That's the Emmylou Harris song that was written for the movie. But it's like you can hardly even hear it.
It's like 3 seconds too, yeah.
This score is
it's a beautiful score.
So beautiful. Yeah.
Very sad.
But yeah,
friend Gus.
The score of this movie, super iconic. It won the best original score Oscar in 2005, and he won back-to-back because he won for Babel the very next year.
Okay.
Really?
Just a very recognizable tune.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's from Argentina. That's why it's a little kooky. Santo Alaya. Yeah, Gustavo. Yeah, it is. It's an iconic little bit of music, that those little guitar, like just simple chords. Very melancholy.
Yeah.
Boy.
It really fits well with the cinematography in this movie. Like it just drives home that they are living in secret in this vast landscape that does not care about them, and in fact hates them in some ways too. Yeah.
Yes.
So this is our Oscar episode, and of course this was nominated for Best Picture.
Yes.
It ended up winning Ang Lee his first directing Oscar, and it won for original or adapted screenplay. Larry McMurtry from Lonesome Dove co-wrote this movie, which is really interesting.
Yes. And I remember he won his Oscar and walked up there in a pair of fucking Wranglers.
Love it. I remember the Oscar. So I should probably talk about the Oscar night when all of this happened.
Sure.
I was at a friend of mine, old boss, Robin Chopis. She ran the Emerson Grill, kind of took little Scott under her wing, who I was dishwashing at the time, and they were just like, yeah, it's Scott. We're going to have an Oscar party, and we're going to invite Scott. It's going to be a good time. And I remember at the time when Larry accepted the Oscar, everybody loved it, of just how Larry looked. And
he looked crazy.
I remember the room was gagged when Jack said crash.
Oh,
yeah.
When Jack said crash, the entire room gasped.
Yeah.
Mama, I will never understand how somebody can win Best Director and the movie does not win Best Picture.
But here's the thing,
that
Pete.
doesn't make no kind of sense.
But here's the thing, is that I do think that there was some blowback with this movie with older Academy members.
Yeah,
probably.
Why is this movie getting that much praise? This gay cowboy movie, and I had forgotten about it, but I read about it a few years later that Tony Curtis.
Oh shit.
Kind of said these super shady things about this movie.
Sure.
And it kind of reflects the older Academy, what their hot take was on this movie. Was he is quoted saying in an interview, it's nothing unique. The only thing unique about it is they put it on the screen and they make them male gay lovers cowboys. Howard Hughes and John Wayne wouldn't like it. When asked about his favorite film of the year, Curtis replied, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire.
No.
Oh, my God.
Coming from someone that is from Some Like It Hot. But that was just sort of
Not Goblet of Fire, bitch.
But but that's just sort of the temperature in the room with older voters of, look what they did to our old Western stars is that they made a gay cowboy movie. And how do you like that?
Yeah,
and my favorite movie is The Goblet of Fire. It's just like, I don't want to say fuck that guy because it's like it's Tony
Curtis.
It's Tony Curtis. Like he get like
why did they even ask him? Because 50 years before he was in a dress playing a trombone like in a
but
movie.
also in one of the big movies with gay subtext, Spartacus. Too.
Yeah,
Spartacus.
totally.
Yeah.
Like one of the most famous classic Hollywood.
I was gonna say you gotta read Tony Curtis's quote with a Brooklyn accent, but you know it's
But yeah, that was just sort of the temperature in the room of sure we'll give you the best directing Oscar, but you're not getting that best picture win.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
right.
You sit your little ass down. Yeah. Crash is going to get it.
Fucking Crash, man. I mean, that's a whole other separate conversation.
That's a whole other separate conversation that I would be curious. I think that we mentioned that on our last mailbag episode that I would be curious to sit down and diplomatically watch Crash and sort of draw my own conclusions of is this a good or a bad movie.
I don't think I've actually ever seen it all the way through.
That is for another day that I do not want to talk about on this call.
Not down that path.
Just as I thought. Trash.
But also, like, when you look back on the 2005 Best Picture race, I mean, you also had Capote. Capote's a really good movie. And we can kind of bitch and moan about Heath not winning Best Actor for this movie. Right. But when you look at Capote, it's like, how are you going to compete with that?
Yeah,
like, how are you going to compete with Philip Seymour Hoffman's Truman Capote?
For sure, yeah. It was a very good movie, for sure. Have you all heard about the fan fiction that Anna Prue gets from people?
Oh, I would imagine that she gets a lot.
Yeah, so she I was reading it was an article in LA Times from like 2008, I think, and they interview her. She lived in this town in Wyoming that's supposed to be kind of where she had imagined Brokeback Mountain would be, and she now lives in Washington, I think, but they interviewed the locals of this town, and they all hated that she lived there and that they were associated with Brokeback Mountain. And when the journalist is interviewing her in her house, she talked about how she after the movie came out, not when she wrote the story, but after the movie came out, she would get so much mail from men who would be like, "Oh, you don't understand men like we do," because it was, it's a woman writing this gay story, and even from like straight men who would be like, "Oh, but it should have ended like this." And she said that she just like eventually regretted like writing it because she was so over how much of this fan fiction, this unsolicited fan fiction that she would get about Brokeback Mountain.
I don't know what's more unbearable is you get the clear like red state of like fuck the gays, like how dare you write a gay cowboy story, or is it more unbearable of well this is how Ennis and Jack's relationship should have ended.
Yeah, right.
Just like the peanut gallery. I don't know which one's worse.
I want to hear what these men have to say. I want to hear what they're like.
All these mansplaining letters to her about this thing that she wrote. Like,
oh my God.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting little tidbit that I read last night.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like for me, I don't have any sort of like I always knew that it was written by a woman, and I was never like, well, she can't tell our story. Like,
she got a pretty fucking it's really
which
good.
Which is interesting now, because do you think that, I mean, just the conversation has changed so much about just gay actors playing gay roles. I mean, we've had Bros, spoiler alert, that really went out of their way to cast. Those movies really went out of their way to cast gay actors in these roles, but that was never on the in the conversation in 2005.
Well, there weren't enough out gay actors to populate 2 roles in the story.
Just the idea of gay cowboys on like as a blockbuster movie in general, like the idea that it should have been 2 gay men playing them, I think, was not even on the forefront of anybody's mind. It would be now, but
like we are lucky that Ang Lee directed this in 2005, and this was not one of those like
A Wolf Productions.
Wolf, yeah,
Yep.
Wolf Creek or whatever. Those like
I honestly think it wouldn't like do well now because it's not as well as it did. It would definitely wouldn't be as groundbreaking.
Everybody has a fucking opinion about everything now.
We didn't have Twitter or
also,
Facebook
how
back
dare
then.
Annie Proulx write this story as a heterosexual woman?
Yeah.
That would fully be like the conversation now.
Yeah, I think so too. There would be the Twitter peanut gallery would be all over it for sure. Yeah.
I mean, there's something to be said about stories written from perspective and all that, but I don't know, man. This material is just solid. Like,
the story is amazing. Yeah, she really. I mean, and just like it just jumps out from the story. It jumps right into film perfectly. Like I was saying earlier, they just adapted so well to the big screen. It was just really, really well written for sure.
And also at this time with movies in Hollywood, to make this movie resonate with the culture, you kind of had to have two straight actors in it. Yeah. To have it land and make that impression in a culture, I kind of think that you had to have the Jake and Heath.
Yeah. Otherwise it's
actors in these roles, or else, I mean, like it would have been regulated to like a straight to video
NC-17, Eating Out 5, The Reckoning. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I think now the conversation, and I think it would be valid about casting two gay men to play these characters instead of two straight men, and I would agree with that. But back in 2005, I think it makes sense to do this because there weren't a ton of out gay actors that could have done this role really anyway, that weren't already doing stuff anyway. But also Heath Ledger and Jake Gyllenhaal did an amazing job too. So I think it was good.
But these characters too, these are not too out gay.
No, not at all.
So
it kind of benefits the material more if you have two straight actors doing it.
Yeah.
And also Heath Ledger took this material very seriously. I know that during the 2006 Oscars that they wanted to make gay cowboy jokes and he refused to be in on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That, he was just no, that's not really the type of movie that I want to make fun of. Go fuck yourself.
That is something that really from the get-go, they both were extremely respectful of what they were. They knew the importance of what they were doing. Ang Lee and the actors did for sure.
Yeah, they just read a script that they really responded to. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that that's something that especially, the children, the legendary children today, I constantly come back to this. It's in this kind of Glee world in this era that we were living in. It's it was becoming, acceptable and it was becoming more mainstream, but it's nowhere near where we are today. And
not at all.
Even today is still pretty fucked up, and we're getting our rights stripped away from us on the regular.
As a reaction to how much progress has been made too.
Right.
That's why, we have
and
one of the biggest television shows on television right now is a show about drag queens competing against each other.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah. And for a long time I was these fucking kids, they don't know, they didn't have to go through anything. They need something to well, now they're really getting some shit thrown at them. But I mean, in 2005 it was definitely a different time.
It was slowly transitioning. That I mentioned at the top of the show that you were getting these major Hollywood movies with LGBT perspectives, but it was just very super specific.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because we've already had Ellen, we've already been in Will and Grace. Will and Grace has been around for a while at this point. So there's already gay themes on television, but it's still extremely controversial and limited too. There's not a lot of it. So it it was, yeah, like you said, it's like a transitionary period where it's becoming more and more acceptable. But that's why this movie was so huge, because it broke a lot of rules for sure.
This movie made like $85 million in its domestic box office run.
Wow. It's amazing.
Like, I mean, like, The Fabelmans has not even broke 20. And that's like nominated for Best Picture. And Michelle Williams is also nominated for Best Actress. Sure. It's just like, this movie was a huge hit.
Yeah.
And I know that there's the whole other thing of that. Why do all gay love stories have to be tragedies? Why does somebody have to die? But in the reality, I don't know. Like,
being gay is tragic.
Being gay is tragic, and relationships like this probably did not have a happy ending.
Yeah, I mean, that's the truth of it, is like that a lot of times these relationships were either like so secret that nobody knew about them, or they did end up in tragedy. Like they either like lost their families who disowned them, or they got murdered, or both, you know.
Right. Yeah, and it's kind of important to show that there's always like, I don't know, that at this point in time there was that gray area of just like, you know, this is the hand that we're dealt. This is the time that we're in, and this is what we're doing with it. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, they had 20 good years. But it did end up it did end in tragedy, and those fucking closing scenes, you know, when he does go grab those shirts, and then finally, you know, when he is sitting in his little trailer and Alma Jr. comes over and hangs out with him.
His little trailer on the prairie.
In the middle of the prairie. Mm-hmm. And Alma Jr. leaves her little sweater behind.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I'm going to put this sweater away.
It's a really moving moment.
It is, yeah.
There are those bloody ass shirts.
Yeah.
And the movie ends, and iconic line, he just says, "Jack, I swear."
Yep.
Like, what is...
It's so good.
God damn it.
Mm-hmm.
God damn it.
You got me.
Fucking ending of this. You got me, gal.
Yeah.
And that's also the thing about this movie, is that I think that especially us in the gay community can, I think now, look back on this movie and almost laugh about it, is that, oh, remember when everybody was losing their mind about Brokeback Mountain? Yeah. And it's kind of one of the things that we waited this long to do this movie on the show, because it's so on the nose. It almost just turned into a late night punchline of Brokeback Mountain. But when you go back and rewatch this movie, there is like, the movie speaks for itself, that it's still really well done.
Yeah, there's a reason why it made $85 million. Yeah, it's a very, very good movie for sure. Even though it is kind of a punchline. Even among gays, it's kind of a punchline. Yeah.
And I mean, but also you think about it, like, what about just like a woman watching this movie from a conservative household from like Wyoming or Montana, that she probably had a very like different notion about gay people, and then she watched Brokeback Mountain, and it made her think about kind of things a little differently.
Yeah. Again, I think
how many lives it changed when watching this movie.
I think it spoke a language that people weren't used to seeing gay people in. You know, like in Western culture, like Central Montana or wherever it might be. So.
And it was Ennis's character who was the most conflicted about everything. You know. And it's like he does love, you know, he does love women, and he loved his wife and all, and that's why there's these questions that come out about. And I think on a surface level, that's where straight people are going to come in and be like, well, what's going on there? What is sexuality, whatever? And it's just like, okay, yeah, maybe he did love Alma, and he did love Linda Cardellini, but you know, at the end of the day, he loved Jack more.
At the end of the day, he was schlepping up to Brokeback Mountain every summer.
Yeah.
So
quarterly retreats.
Yeah, to go fishing. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's on Netflix right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you can go watch it, all 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Break out your DVD from 2006.
Yeah, it's 3.
I was reading. Did we both own this, or did we just you, or did it just?
We both own this, and I think that I hawked mine when we moved.
There you go.
I was also reading that this is the first movie that was released digitally. that you could buy it digitally online. That it was released on DVD and digital at the same time. If you could have streamed this,
who the fuck was streaming a whole 2 hours in 2005?
Stream this summer of 2006 on your Dell laptop.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm telling you, I was LimeWiring some songs.
I was just going to say fire up LimeWire and get that Brokeback Mountain copy.
That would take a good day and a half for Kelly Clarkson. So
yeah, for sure.
This would take.
I mean, last year when we did Donnie Darko, I remember us just trying to think of reasons to talk about Jake Gyllenhaal. And yeah, like Jakey,
that ass.
It was a moment
that's a good reason.
of just us being obsessed with Jake Gyllenhaal.
He's a very pretty boy, it's true.
He's, oh my goodness.
Just everything, October Sky, Donnie Darko, The Day After Tomorrow.
Yeah,
it's our Jakey.
We love Jakey Poo.
We like to sometimes hold on to that he might be batting for our team, but I don't think it's the case.
Yeah, I don't think we should hold out hope anymore. Yeah, that ship sailed.
That train has sailed.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't believe they got away with putting him in supporting actor. I cannot believe that they made that work.
In Brokeback Mountain, he was?
Yeah.
They put him in supporting actor,
Aww.
and he was nominated. He lost to George Clooney and Syriana.
That's crazy.
But yeah, this was not a co-lead movie. They figured Jake would have the better shot at supporting, so that's where they campaigned him. And
also, if they were both in lead, then we're splitting the vote and all.
Is it going to be like a Thelma and Louise situation? And yeah, they put Heath in lead and Jakey in supporting.
All right.
I mean, it got him his only Oscar nomination.
Yeah. Still though, he's like.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is bottom erasure is what that is.
This is also the winter. This is also the holiday season that Jarhead came out. Okay, so you probably don't remember Jarhead.
No,
and what a
Jarhead
big deal.
Is great, yeah.
Jarhead, like that body in Jarhead. When you see that ass in the shower.
I paused that
Jake in that Santa Claus.
Yes,
Jake in that Santa Claus hat and Jarhead. And I remember going to that movie in college of that I'm going to this war movie that I do not give a shit about to see Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yeah, I couldn't totally tell you what the movie's actually about. I just know that he's
Desert Storm.
Yeah, well, yeah, but it's like a war movie.
It's about that.
Yeah,
body, yada.
Right.
But you just see Jake in that crazy body.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, we've come a long way, baby. Jake is still turning it out. I mean, what's he doing lately?
He did that movie. It's like he's like a 911 dispatcher on Netflix recently.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
Emergency Ambulance.
Yeah, I didn't really like it.
L.A.
Jake Gyllenhaal's also, kind of final thoughts about Jake Gyllenhaal. Jake Gyllenhaal is one of those actors that I love, but there's just something about studio-driven vehicles for him that just do not land.
Yeah.
That, like, we got to get Jake in a good project. I don't know. Just like we need like outside influences of like these are the types of roles that you should be taking.
Can we get him a Ryan Murphy limited series to get him an Emmy maybe?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Brokeback
a Globe and an Emmy. Oh.
It was
return to
it was all a dream the whole time.
Oh my god. Bring back David Harbour. We got it.
Yeah.
Drew, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, as usual.
It's been a fun premiere.
Yep. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, shit, this is, it's been a long time coming. This was a long break, but season 5.
We're back, baby.
We're back, baby.
My Google spreadsheet is pretty crazy. We're going to have some fun guests. Yeah. And so this is the start of our 2000s Oscar series. We're going to be doing The Devil Wears Prada and Black Swan.
Speaking
of Anne Hathaway. Two Annie movies back to back.
Yes,
have we done anything with Anne before this?
I'll have to look it up.
I don't think so.
I'll have to look it up. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, man, this was so much fun. We'll definitely have you on again in the future for something else.
Sounds good.
All right. My Montana sis, you're the East Coast, and I'm the West Coast.
We took over the country, yep.
Absolutely.
All right.
All right, bye, guys.
All right, man. Well, let's see
Thanks,
you
Drew.
soon.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
And thank you so much for listening, everybody.
What a fun premiere.
Love it.
Our big opening.
Welcome to our big opening.
So much for my big opening.
Thanks for listening, everybody. This has been a lot of fun, but I think right now it is time for
Patreon shout-outs.
Patreon shout-outs! Woohoo! We want to thank all of our wonderful patrons, including some of our new patrons like Whirly Flower Frog, whoever you are. Thank you so much for being a patron. Lori.
Thanks, Mom. That's my mom.
Brenna. Let's see. Jess Rabbit 45. Lawrence. Danielle. Alexis. We got some new patrons. Thomas, Mark, Jackson, Millie, Ted, Benny, Melanie, Susan, JJ, Shelby, Michael, Heather, Jamie, Drew, Genevieve, Dawn, Joshua, Emily, Melly, Aaron, Jessica, Nick, and Shannon, Christine, and Rufino.
Thank you for being a friend.
You guys. Oh, my goodness.
We really
Patrons,
appreciate it.
We are going to have a brand new Watch With Us commentary track.
It'll be out around the time this episode comes out.
Indeed. And you can watch with us. You can sync up the commentary tracks to the movie, and it's like you're watching the movie directly with us. Or you can just listen to it, through your good old headphones like a regular supplemental
listen to it in your car.
Episode.
Why not?
Yeah, it's fun doing it that way too. But it is actually really cute when you sync it up with the movie. It's really fun. And we give you instructions on how to do that if you go to patreon.com/movies that made us gay to join our Patreon. We would also love it if you would subscribe, like, and share the podcast. Head over to Apple Podcasts and give us 5 stars. You can also give us 5 stars on Spotify. And if you'd love to write us a review, we'll read it on an upcoming episode. We love reviews of all sorts. So head over and do that. You can find us on all the socials. We are at Movies That Made Us Gay on Instagram and Facebook. And we're also on Twitter at MTMUG Pod.
Yeah.
If you'd like to follow our personals, feel free. Go right ahead. My name is Pete. I'm at Peter Lasagna on Instagram and Twitter.
And I am Scott Youngballer on Instagram, and follow my letterbox.
Yes, indeed. So thank you so much for listening, everybody. Welcome back. Season 5 is...
It's getting started, Pete.
Started,
yep.
man.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go. Another season, another year. So let's do this, everybody. Thank you so much for listening.
Bye.
Bye.